Kathy and Shelley, thank you so much for being here on this session of Conversations with Courageous Cancer Warriors. We are really honored to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
And so I just want to jump right in there. First and foremost, I just want to, to let the listeners know you have been lifelong friends for quite some time, right?
Yes. Ma'am. Quite some time. Yes, we have.
And so how did that introduction happen? I'd love to hear that backstory.
Oh,
Go
my
ahead,
gosh.
Kathy.
This is my favorite because my family, when Shelley and I were 12 years old, my family moved from Indianapolis to Schaumburg, Illinois, where her family lived, right on the same street that we were moving on to. So on the way to the new house, my dad said, well, I found out there's a girl your age right on our block, so you'll have somebody to hang out with. And I'm like, oh, that's so great. And we get there and like days go by and I don't have a visit from my neighbor girl, and I'm wishing that she would have. But I marched over there to her house, and her mom took me in and hugged me and took me up to her bedroom. And so Shelley was sitting in her room reading The Hobbit. And this is just a really clear memory for me because I came from a family that really did not read much. So at 12, I wasn't the book fanatic that I am today. So I knew nothing about the book. But when Shelley told me about it, it was clear that it was all about just this magical, fantasy characters. And that was my introduction to what has been a lifelong friendship of just witnessing the magic that she's created in her life, in addition to what I feel I've created in mine. So anyway, we bonded, bam, just like that. And so we've been friends for a very long time, lived across the country from one another, but, we're just joined at the spirit and the heart and have walked through all the chapters of life together. And so here we are. We wrote a book. That's our latest, collaboration and friendship.
I love it. And I'm a believer that regardless of distance, the energetic connection is always there between people who are meant to be in each other's lives. And since you mentioned it, let's just jump right into it. This book, Leave Your Light On. Now, tell me a little bit of the backstory and how you co-authored this book together.
Well, I started out with a journal during my son's cancer journey. This was for my own sanity. And what became a journal that spanned his cancer journey and then the rest of his life and post passing became the book. I called Kathy one day because someone had advised me that I needed a ghostwriter to help take it out of journal form and put it into narrative form. And I was at my wit's end. I had no idea where to turn. And so I called my best friend, and not thinking, Kathy's a writer, we're best friends, she's known writer his whole life. This was the perfect fit. And she had to actually bring it up. And of course it was like a rock hit me in the head. And so we started our collaboration on the book at that point. And we spent 2 years putting it together and talked every day, sometimes multiple times a day, and sorted through it. And it was very, very healing and cathartic for me because Kathy has a background in leading people through deep feelings and difficulty and even grief. So as that was all part of my story, we did a great job, I think, and telling writer's story.
Oh, I love that. And, isn't it funny how the people that are close to you, you never really consider them for these kinds of stuff, like what you're up to. And then they're like, hey, pay attention to me, right?
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
And so now the book is available on Amazon. I know that for sure. And we will make sure that we provide the link here. But tell us a little bit about what that was like for you, you know, as a mom, as a caregiver, when Ryder was going through his journey.
What the book was like for me, the writing of it, or what his journey was like?
Let's start with his journey, and then if you want to talk about, you know, how that led you to writing your journal, then that'd be great too.
Okay, well, I was painting a graphic on a gym wall at the high school, and I got a call from Ryder, and he said, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is I have cancer. And I dropped my paintbrush.
Yeah.
And he said, but the good news is it's the kind that can be cured.
Right.
Okay, time out. Wait a minute. Where are we at this point? So his doctor had found some firmness in his testicle. It was testicular cancer. And within a week, he'd had his surgery. And within another week, he started chemo. Now, in this period of time, we scrambled to find the best possible service, caregivers, and medical team. And we settled on one that Ryder liked best, and we also liked. And he started right into his chemo. And from there, I started the journal on CaringBridge. And I wrote in it every day because I spent the days with him at the hospital. And he'd be inpatient 1 week and outpatient for 2. And it took him a while to start feeling the effects of the chemo, so he was pretty much rocking through it. He took his guitar with him. He took a library of books with him on spirituality, on writing lyrics, and I spent time doing research on, you know, the poisons you don't want to have in the house, the kind of food he should be eating, what side effects we might expect, and talking to the doctor and the nurses. And they were emphatic, the doctor was emphatic that I let Ryder be a man, were his words, and kind of lead this journey through the cancer treatment, which was a real trial for me because I was mom and I wanted to, you know, hover and make sure that he was doing everything right. And I had to back off and give him a really long leash, sometimes dropping the leash when he would come home and first few weeks feel pretty good and wanted to go off and live life. Absolutely dove in and scheduled gigs in between his cancer treatments, went hiking off into the woods, up to the mountaintop, went down to the beach, did everything he could to nurture his own spirit. And it was difficult for me to let go because, like I said, I was spending every minute at the hospital with him, and we were kind of joined at the hip. And then at home, I was doing the caregiving, cleaning the house, washing the dogs, making sure the refrigerator was full of the best possible foods for him. And he would come home with takeout from some drive-through. So we were at cross purposes sometimes, but I learned to adjust and let him pretty much lead. And I let the doctors and nurses weigh in on what he really needed to be doing in the hospital and to care for himself. So I was an observer in a lot of ways, but couldn't help myself from weighing in on what his life should look like.
And that's my next question to you, right? Because it's really hard watching somebody you love go through this, regardless of age, right?
Right.
They're always your children. But what is one of the things that you implemented in order to be able to take that step back, but still feel like you're making a difference and you're being a support?
Well, I had to realize that he was being prodded, poked, and hovered over by the medical staff, and that I needed to just be in the wings and available to him, allow him to choose what was playing on TV, where he went in between his cancer treatments. And sometimes he was out all night.
Yeah.
Like right after his surgery, the next day, he went out with his friends from school and did a gig, and I was dumbfounded. I thought, you've just been through surgery. You should be home. You should be laying on the couch. Watch soccer. I don't care. But I had to learn to really back off and just be there, like in the bleacher seats, waiting to be needed.
And then, so you had Kathy there as a support. And is that something that you used often? Like, did you guys communicate a lot during this time?
Kathy, did we?
You know, not as much as you might have thought. And I think from my end, I felt like you were saturated. Your life was just so completely full with being at the hospital all the time. And you were posting on CaringBridge. I felt like I was staying in touch. And I mean, I always knew that you could reach out whenever, and you knew that too. But I think that was a very intense period of time. And you not only had Ryder going through that, you had, you know, a teenager at home, you had a husband working around the clock, you had a son away at college. I mean, there was just so much in your life. And I think we probably didn't talk as much as normal, but you know, I knew you knew I was there.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say, right? It's okay. You know, something that I realized through my own journey is that I actually cut people out, and not like intentionally. I just didn't really want to talk to people, or I didn't have time. And I struggled with, how do I talk to people about this?
Yeah.
Right. And so, I got into a lot of trouble, I won't lie. So I understand the dynamics of, like, you know, wanting to give people space. And, but yeah, I agree that people know that you're still a support, and you're always there for each other. But what was it like? So you had this journal, the idea of a book came up, you know, you have your son playing gigs. He wrote a song about his experience too. Like, there's so much positivity. Like, how did you keep that positive mindset throughout this experience?
Well, Ryder and I never talked about the possibility that this could be a terminal illness. We always believed from the very beginning that he was going to be well at the end of it. And the doctor was confident, so I took from that. And what else did you want to know? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I don't mean to ask such a long question. Just honestly, like, how did you keep a positive mindset? Right. So you had to let go. You had to let him do his thing. You know, you're kind of a little bit going into just autopilot, right? Which is what we do when this stuff happens. You just go through and do what you know you need to do.
Right.
But and outside of journaling, because that's one of the things that I tell people is so important to do. Like, what's another thing, or it might be the only thing, of how you kept a positive mindset throughout this?
Well, I tried to do some self-care. There was kind of an awakening in the middle of it when I realized I really needed to go to the gym or take a nap. But there was very little time for that when I was spending 8 hours a day at the hospital and tag teaming with my husband, who didn't get dinner when he got home unless he was foraging through the refrigerator. There was the journal, and that kept me in touch with friends, so they knew what I needed when I needed it. And they reached out, and I was ready for the most part. But I focused on Ryder and how he was doing, and the life he was bringing into his life through watching videos at the hospital of his favorite bands, to the reading, playing music for the nurses. It lifted me up to see the way he was handling it. And he's a very chill character. He took everything in stride And I took an example from that.
Yeah. And is that what surprised you the most?
Yes, he was, like I said, he was a very chill character. He was very cooperative, where I would have expected him to kick and scream or complain. He just did what he was told by the doctors and nurses. And when he came home, it was a different story. He took off. He went camping with the wolves. He drove all the way up the coast to San Francisco overnight one time. And I didn't find out till he showed me the pictures on his phone. First of the wolves, which was only a couple hours away, and I had approved it. Then of the Golden Gate Bridge, and I said, whoa, wait a minute. He goes, oh, it's just a little bit north of the wolves, like 6 hours north. And you know, that was the kind of thing he did. Then he'd come home and be the absolutely serene until he hit the storm of our house, which was overtaken by his youngest brother, who was born a storm and remained a storm his whole life. And then Ryder would get kind of agitated and want to leave the house again. So I'm rambling.
No, you're recreating it beautifully, because it's life. It's what we do, right? Like, you have this circumstance that comes into your life. It's truly something that takes over everything. And you need to remember that you are still your own person. The other people in your family, in your lives, are still their own people. You all have your own needs. And what I love about this story is that, like, Ryder was like, I got this. And he just remained a free spirit and didn't allow it to change who he was. He actually took it, and he just, as we like to say, he like bossed up, right? Like, he is a definition of a warrior, right? We make a distinction here between like being a survivor at the effects of what's happening to you and being a warrior, like somebody who's like, bring it on. And I absolutely love that, because, you know, you have two choices. You could either be the victim, or you could be at cause, you know, be of purpose and move forward. And that's what I hear. So tell me about what the book, you know, what was that like for you, going back through what you journaled and the experience? And then here you are, you have this amazing book that's available for other people to learn from.
The book was, like I said, cathartic. It was very, very helpful to sort all these memories out and put them together into his story, which is all about the light that emanated from him and that he nurtured, and his spiritual growth, which rubbed off on me. I mean, I took a lesson from him, and really from his earliest childhood, he was teaching me to chill. And because my spirit is not that way, I'm exuberant and kind of over the top in a lot of ways, like my younger son. And Ryder was just a calm baby, self-sufficient child, and grew into a very independent spirit. And I just took lessons from him along the way, and had to take a deep breath and go with his flow. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Now, Kathy, what was it like for you?
Well, it required every ounce of me, every minute that we were involved, because I felt just a complete honor to be responsible for helping Ryder continue to put his light into the world. I mean, so it was a writing challenge. It was, you know, I grieved for Ryder too. And so when it became emotional for Shelley, which it did occasionally, I would feel it just as deeply as she did, but yet I needed to help her. I'll tell you the big way I think about it. She brought her journal to me, and it was just an unbelievable read. But the guidance she had been given was, just putting a journal out there is not really going to serve you in the way that I think you're trying to accomplish. So we need to turn this into more of a story. And when Shelley and I began to figure out what it meant was, how did we tell the story of Ryder and his light? Mm-hmm. How did that become like the story that this book is built on? Because only then can we know that we did what Ryder would have done had he continued to be here. So anyway, we went through some challenging times with like just parts of the journey that were really vivid memories for Shelley. Yeah. And we had to take them out because they didn't really serve the book or the story or the goal that we had for Ryder. So in the end, I mean, we worked through every single thing as though we were born to take that back and forth and figure it out together and make the right decision every time, whether she's the one who said, well, this is what I think we need to do. And I would go, you're right, that is what we need to do, or whether I was the one. So it was just a magnificent tribute to our friendship. And just, I think when you have your heart and your spirit in the right place, everything will go well.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And so what is the essence of the book? Like, clearly it honors who Ryder was and how he took life by the horns, for lack of a better word. But when it was all said and done, and it's, you've made it this amazing story, what did you think when you sat back and, it's finally done? What is that feeling there?
Mm-hmm. It's very satisfying. I feel like we've done Ryder proud. I think we've brought his essence to the world. He's a hopeful character. He's an inspirational character, as he was in life. And I should mention that he did not die of the cancer. Mm-hmm. It was a car accident a few months after he finished his treatment. So he was a warrior to the very end. He was declared clear and then, dove into life. And so I feel like what we've done is depict Ryder, his spirit, and encourage people to find their own light and to hang on to that and nourish it. That was the point of the book, and I think we've accomplished that. What else do you have to say on that, Kath?
Well, when I think back on that, one of the early things that happened after Ryder's death, well, the celebration of life was put together in a matter of days. I know, just friends that live around Shelley just like swooped in and put it together. And they were thinking that they might have 300 people show up, and they would need to have overflow rooms because they were going to have video, they were going to have performances and all the stuff. Well, 1,200 people showed up. Wow. And it was astounding for them because they had no idea what Ryder was doing in the world, how much of an impact he was having on the world by being himself. That's all he ever did. And so who doesn't need permission to be themselves and to know that they're enough and that they can leave a trail of goodness behind no matter when that moment might come? So I still am, I'm overwhelmed by that image in my mind of and all these people wrote, cards at the celebration of life, telling Shelley and Chris, here's what I'm remembering about him. Here's how he affected my life. And so many of those found their way into the book because they, illuminate and illustrate what Ryder, he left a big imprint in life.
I absolutely love that. I love that. And I love, hearing that his light was seen by so many people. Mm-hmm. Right. And you're absolutely true that a lot of us need to hear it. Like, you're enough, like, keep moving forward, be yourself. There's so many times that we get caught up in our heads, right?
Definitely.
And the negativity that comes around it. And that's why, like, what we like to talk about here is really keeping that positive mindset that we've talked about and just keep moving forward, even if that means, you know, you take life 1 second at a time. So
Which he did. He kept saying, be in the moment.
yeah,
Be in the moment, Mom. And he lived that to the fullest. And Ryder led with his heart, not his head. So sometimes he'd get himself into a little bit of trouble. But I mean, he came up home all scraped up from body surfing into some rocks. And this was during his treatment, where the last thing they want to see is an injury when you've got a compromised immune system.
right.
But he was doing what spoke to his heart and what nourished his spirit. And, you know, the rest of it, be damned. He was going to live it.
Yeah, and you know, I'm putting myself in your shoes right now. Like you wanna hug him and kill him at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Like, thank you for being you and being courageous, but at the same time, like, stop doing that. Yeah, I absolutely love this story. And if you can, you know, either of you, both of you, if you could share one thing to those who are listening, any advice or message of hope, what would that be?
Kathy, go.
You can hear me go, I'm ready to talk. Okay, this really goes back to my history with my mother had cancer. She had it back, oh gosh, in 1995. She had a very short, very painful experience, and in 2.5 months was diagnosed and then gone. And I remembered so clearly that we never talked about anything with her. She didn't want to burden her family or frighten her family, or even probably face up to maybe what it was going on with her, because she was young and it was just terrifying. So fast forward like 10 years, and I'm a healing artist. I take people through difficult journeys through art and writing and just different ways of helping them let things out that they don't know how to put into words, or they don't maybe even know that they're feeling. But when you go through a profound experience like cancer, and I know you know this, the number of things that come into your head that you have to find your equilibrium, and you have to find your courage, and you have to know what you believe you can do with that. Those are the kind of things that I was passionate about helping cancer patients do, and I never wanted their families around because I knew that was inhibiting to them. I'd get the family to leave the room, and I'd have a session with these patients, and the truth and the honesty that came out of them changed them. I saw it with my own eyes. And so I wanted to weigh in and say how much I believe in what you were talking about earlier. Having a journal, having a way to get on paper what just sits in your head and might be a little overwhelming. When you start to write, A, you're going to feel better, but B, you're going to make sense of your journey, and you're going to find the meaning, and you're going to find your strength and your courage and all those kinds of things. So that's my, I really believe in that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, no one can really prepare you for any of it, whether you're personally affected or if it's your child, or it's traumatizing on so many levels, and you find yourself thinking back to when you were 5 years old making a bad decision, right? Like it all comes flooding back to you.
Sure.
And you need to handle it. So I agree with that wholeheartedly, and thank you for who you are for these people who truly need your services. I mean, thank you. I feel your heart, and thank you for who you are.
Well, thank you.
And on the journaling aspect, we were lucky enough to have excerpts from Ryder's journal, which was enlightening and brought us into places he never articulated to me. There was a lot we didn't talk about. We talked about the day-to-day and what he needed, but as far as his spiritual growth went, that was a private thing for him, except for one or two conversations when he was ready and it was his time. But his journaling was very enlightening, and we were able to include some of that in the book.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. And everyone has their own way on how to deal with what they're going through. And that's one of the things that I like to tell people, you know, my clients or, you know, my friends or anybody that's dealing with this, like, it's okay. No matter how you deal with it, it's okay. Like, find your version of what that is and have it be okay. And not everybody might understand that, you know, like you said, going and, you know, surfing and going to see San Francisco, that's, you know, getting in the car and just going. Some people may not understand it, but it's really okay. And you need to be true to yourself as to what, like, you inherently know what's going to work for you. Right. Like I think that's what I discovered throughout this is like, don't think, just go with what feels right for you.
Right. And that can take many forms. I mean, you don't have to be a writer. In fact, you don't have to be a good writer to write, but you shouldn't judge it. You know, it needs to just come from your heart. It will be authentic, real, and will resonate, you know, with you, if no one else. It doesn't have to be shown to anyone else, but it can take the form of gardening or cooking or any creative outlet, painting or playing an instrument if you're so inclined. But all of these things are paths to healing and just feeling better.
Yeah, absolutely. And give yourself permission too, right? That's the other thing. Like, I love that you realized you needed to just to take a step back and let Ryder just be him. Right. And so for the caregivers, for everyone out there, including the patients, like, have it just be okay. Like, it's all good. It'll all work out. Right. Just let it be the way that it's going to show up for you. Because so many people fight that. I know for myself, like I alluded to it a little bit, I had a hard time listening to people's opinions. So once I had a couple of interactions that didn't serve my soul, I just clammed up and I wasn't really talking to people unless I knew. And like you know, like I mentioned, I got into a lot of hot water because I wasn't sharing fully with those very close to me. But then I was on, you know, I created this blog, this daily gratitude blog, because it's what helped me. And they're like, you're sharing yourself with the entire world, but you won't talk to me about it. And it's like, and it's like, that's just what I needed to do. And it took me over 2 years after my diagnosis to be able to really speak freely as to what I felt and how I was going through stuff. So thank you for bringing that to light, that, you know, the topic of having it be okay to just be who you want to be, and however you need to work through it is how you need to work through it.
Right.
And I will add to that. I just really always believed that it felt to me like Ryder's cancer could have gone many different ways. But I believe that he healed because he gave himself enough room to heal. Yeah. And had he not done that, it would have been counterproductive to his health and well-being.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we talk a lot about that here, about all everybody is trying to do is control, right? You're trying to control a situation that you can't control because you have no idea how the journey is going to go for you. So then people look for other avenues on things that they could control, whether it's their relationships or lack thereof, or something else in their life, because they are, you know, as a human being, that's what we do. We love to control our outcomes. And when you are at a point where you feel that you're not in the driver's seat, you have to find something that lets you feel like you are.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And that's what I hear from your experiences, from Ryder's experience, how he chose to live, how, you know, how this book manifested. It's truly a testament to that. And I really commend you, and I'm really excited to read it myself. Now, how can people find the book? Where is it located?
Well, we have a website for Ryder, which is called ryderbuckmusic.com, and it's RYDER. And the book is available through a link there. And it's also a landing place through the media page. Our podcasts are posted there. And there are lots of videos, pictures, and stories about his life. And I think the videos are worth 1,000 words, because his light, his presence just emanates from the stage. His love, which is what he was all about. His motto was share the love.
Yeah.
And it really comes through. So that's a great place to go. His music is available there. It's also available on iTunes under Ryder Buck, and also under Ryder Buck and the Breakers, because we did we produced one CD, which was very healing, of just Ryder singing, because he recorded that much. And then the other 2 CDs are his music that he wrote and sometimes performed. And his youngest brother, Reed, sang lead for Ryder after he passed.
Oh.
So we have 3 CDs.
Yeah.
And also, it's available on every retail outlet, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all that too.
And if people wanted to find either of you, is that the best place to go, or do you have your own?
I have contact information there's a contact page on ryderbuckmusic.com.
Okay.
And Kathy has her own. Go ahead, Kath.
Yeah, I have a website called Kathy Curtis Inc., INK, because I am a writer, and writing factors into pretty much everything I do. But I do have online creative programs, and I offer, one-on-one help if people just feel like they want to really follow a guided path through the expression when they're going through cancer. I can give a lot of kind of guidance on that, or work one-on-one all the way through it. It's really, I'm just available for what people need at the time. But yeah, Kathy Curtis Inc. is where it all happens.
I love that. Thank you. And, as someone who leads with her heart, you have spoken to my soul today. Like I feel recreated that, what I'm up to in the world, and, what this community is up to in the world, and being able to interact with such amazing souls as yourself, really inspires me and lets me know that we're on the right track, and that we can really affect positive change for a lot of people with this conversation today. So
thank you. I feel the same way about you. This has been really nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I truly, I wish you all the best. Please come back anytime to share an update. We would love to have you. And thank you. Thank you again to both of you for who you are.
Thank you so much, Lori.
Thanks.